Game over, man. Game over.
You're gonna need a bigger boat. Why so serious?
I am Iron Man.
This is a tasty burger.
Welcome to the In Session Film Podcast.
Welcome to this podcast review for June 10th, 2024, and I'm JD Duran.
And I'm Brennan Cassidy.
Hey, thanks for joining us, everybody, as we channel our inner bad boy for this conversation.
Well, with that kind of intro, we're either going to ride or die.
We're going to ride or die. You know what's really interesting about this conversation?
Yeah.
Is that we have the original bad boy, the OG. Most people know this already, but in case you don't, on this episode, we are joined by the original. He has been a bad boy for 25 years, and that's why we love him. Joining us once again, we could only have one guest on this episode. He joined us for the last one. If we could time travel back to 2003 and 1995, we would have had him on for those reviews too.
I mean, at this point, I think it's safe to say that original Bad Boys is based on this man's life.
Exactly. Joining us, the original bad boy himself, Diego Crespo from the Waffle Press Podcast. Diego, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much for having me again, guys.
Yes.
This was a real treat, a real blessing, real honor. I mean, I still tune into your guys' stuff on a regular basis already. So it's always great to it feels like it hasn't been that long since I spoke to you guys, but it kind of has.
It has. It's funny that you say that because it's been a running gag the last couple of weeks whenever we've talked about Bad Boys, where I'm like, yeah, the last one came out like a few years ago, right? And Brendan is like, no, that was 2020. I'm like, where did the time go? I can't keep track.
I think it was 2 months before the world shut down is when that movie came out.
Mm-hmm.
I know,
saw
it's
it 4 times in theaters.
You helped theaters stay slightly afloat before the world went down.
I tried. I don't think I've mentioned this in many places, but it was like that Birds of Prey were the last new movies I saw, and then the last movie I saw the week before they were like, don't leave your houses, was Come and See.
Wow.
So that was that was weird. Great movie though.
Great movie, but maybe a solid mirroring of our psychological and emotional mindset at the time.
That was unfortunate timing.
Gosh.
I went back and listened to a portion of that review when we did that conversation back in 2020, and it made me so excited for this conversation to bring Diego back, jump into the world of Bad Boys once again. And of course, for those that have listened to the show for a long time, if you're a new listener, I have been such an avid fan of this franchise, the first 2 films that Michael Bay did, that I know, when we started In Session Film, I didn't think there was ever going to be a world in which more Bad Boys movies were going to be made. So when that 3rd one came out, I was like flying on the moon. Like it was incredible.
Yeah, and now we're at a point where we have a 4th one, and it's doing well enough at the box office that if they greenlight Bad Boys 5, I will not be surprised. That's the world we're living in now.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was a great conversation. I definitely urge people to go and check that out.
Yeah.
So I'm very excited to have Diego back because he equally is an avid fan of these films. That's why
he's the only credible source of
original.
the 3 of us. So if there's any opinion you want to take with as big of a grain of salt here, it's Diego's, because he's going to be the one that's correct.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I love movies. I still love these movies. I've not been silent about my opinions about this new one. If you follow me online,
Yeah.
So know that going into this too. Maybe that's biased or whatever, but I don't know. All criticism is
We're all
biased.
fans of stuff. It's okay.
Yeah, everyone has certain preferences. That's all that means,
Exactly.
And these are my preferences. Bad Boys.
Same. I'm totally there with you. As we start this conversation, I actually want to toss it to you, Diego, because you've noted that the last month or so for you, as it relates to this movie, has been quite the journey. And I'm extremely excited to hear you talk about it. So I just want to lay the or give you the floor rather, and just hear you talk about the lead up to this movie with you.
Thank you very much. So this actually even goes back further than a month, I should say. I started showing these movies to some friends that weren't familiar with. They knew of them, but they hadn't seen them, or one of them hadn't seen them in a very long time. They hadn't seen the third one yet, and so we kind of ran through the first two movies, and I got to show them like, look, this is like where Bay comes from. This is like the birth of a style of action movie that we associated with stuff for 20 years. And like, they're well-read film fans on their own accord, just not really it's not their avenue as much. Right.
Yeah.
And then I had heard that this new Bad Boys, the turnaround is ridiculously fast. And that's always like, oh no, you're shuffling out a movie that you filmed it in January to March, and then you're releasing it in theaters like several months later. Like, oh geez, I hope they don't screw the pooch on this one. And then I start hearing, oh, they're really happy with this movie. They got picture lock. They're starting to show it to critics like a month and a half before release. And I'm like, ooh, okay, wait, maybe something happened.
Usually,
So then just having other friends tell me that stuff was really exciting. But I was like, you never know, right? And then I start getting, I'll just say, blessed with these opportunities from places like my good friends over at Discussing Film, who are like, well, they put this this press event together last minute. No one can go. Can you like call out and like go for us as like a favor? And I was like, yeah, sure. What is it? They're like, we don't know.
Gonna say no.
yeah, exactly.
It's Bad Boys related. I'm there. That's all.
Yeah. And then it was like this experience at Porsche in Carson in California, which is not far from me and where I would have been anyways. And then they get the merch, which I'm wearing right now. If you're watching the video version, Bad Boys Ride or Die shirt.
I love
it. Will Smith and Martin Lawrence show up, and they didn't tell people that. But the moment I got to the area, they were like, I saw the camera crews talking and setting up. They're like, okay, so when they come in from this direction, we'll get them on the white. And I'm like, oh, okay, the Bad Boys are gonna come in like 5 minutes. Okay, great. Let me mentally and physically prepare myself, because I've never seen Will Smith in person or Martin Lawrence. I don't know what's gonna happen to me. But not only was that like life affirming, just seeing like basically my favorite living movie star, like just own a crowd in person. Because if there's anyone better, I don't know. Then they taught, which is very funny, because there's genuine film journalists there and influencers. This is nothing against either party. What they had us do there was a relay race, like a physical event,
like a real physical relay.
And learning how to drive a Porsche by ourselves and learning to drift, which is not that hard actually. But you do have to have a good car for that. And in the real world, I don't have a good enough car for that. So that's the only time I'll ever do that. But it was just very funny. It's like, all right, this is like the badass action movie. We're going to have people run through the ringer. And it's like, there's a lot. I met many nice people there. I ran into some people I knew. Influencers and film journalists, like, look, no judgment of character here. Not necessarily in great shape across the board, which is totally fine, So it was like half the people that tried it didn't stick the landing. The other half people that did finish it were like, everyone's like, yeah, it was awesome. I'm a bad boy. I was one of those, the second people, by the way. I was miserable. So I'm not like in excellent shape either. So I had a whole day just of bad boy experiences, and I was like, I don't even need the movie to be good. I'm good after that. And I'm very lucky to say this is the last thing. I'll just wind down so we could actually talk about the movie we're to talk about. But I have a very good friend who is well connected with the Bruckheimer pictures.
Okay.
And they told me that they were prepping for the premiere. And if they got the +1, I would be their +1. And I said after that, I would name my first child after them if they kept me. They said I didn't have to do that. But
you're going to do it anyway because you are a bad boy.
I might. And yeah, so I got to go to the premiere after this experience.
That's pretty awesome.
Gosh.
I've been on cloud 9 ever since.
What was the environment like at the premiere? Like, what was the ambiance? Was it different than the press event? Like, what was that like?
People were in better shape at the premiere. And I'm not in great shape either. This is not judgment on anyone. It's just, Will Smith and Bruckheimer pictures. Like these are classic Hollywood movie star producers and such. They want pretty people on the carpet.
Yeah.
I didn't get to walk in the carpet because they got the stars out there, like, oh, Will Smith and Martin Lawrence are like rapping on the bus on Hollywood Boulevard with the directors. And then everyone else is like, all right, go around the back of the Chinese theater.
Oh, you got the back of the Chinese theater is basically.
I got to go to the premiere. That's all that matters to me.
Yeah.
But I just thought
that was funny. That too.
This would make for the funniest podcast episode ever. For all of that intro to say, yeah, I didn't care for this movie. That would be like the biggest twist.
And it was okay.
Yeah. But I got to meet Fletcher from Bad Boys 1, 2, and Ride or Die.
Wow.
Just in line, and I were getting our the popcorn and the drinks and stuff, right? And my friend had this nice dress on, and she notices someone stepping on the back of the dress. It kind of gives it a little tug, it's like, hey, and we didn't see how tall the person was next to us. So, we look up, he looks down, and it's Fletcher from Bad Boys, and he's like,
That's
what are you guys doing down there? I was just, hey man, how's it going?
That is
registered
incredible.
Who it was immediately, but I was like, oh my god, you know who that was? And that was fun.
Oh, that's incredible. That's
did
adorable.
he have the glasses? That's what I
yep,
wanna know.
he sure did.
The thick glasses.
Oh yeah,
that's amazing.
I thought they were costuming. I don't think it is. I think that man has the glasses.
Fletcher's a real person.
Exactly.
The glasses are real. The man is real.
Yeah.
Wow, that is very exciting. I'm so thrilled for you, Diego. A little envious, of course, but
well, thanks.
I do love that for you.
Yeah, that's amazing.
If anyone deserved to have that experience, it certainly was Diego. So that is very, very cool to hear.
Absolutely.
I guess my side tangent before we get into the discussion, because I don't want to get too bogged down in this, but I grew up in rural Michigan, so movies were not shot where I come from.
Yeah.
So I've never really had this experience, although I've certainly seen many movies where it takes place in quote unquote Miami, including these Bad Boys movies.
Yeah.
But the previous films were shot before I lived here, and especially before I really knew Miami the way I do now.
Right.
It was a little surreal watching this film, knowing the exact locations in which they were when they were in Miami. I recognized everything so vividly. I was like, oh my God, they were not joking. This isn't one of those situations where it takes place in a city, but they shot it in Atlanta or whatever.
So if we do hear cheers in your background, JD, that means it's them shooting Bad Boys 5 as we speak, right?
It could be. Well, and it was interesting because I knew they shot some stuff here for real because it was on the news and it was all over social media, but I wasn't exactly sure to what extent. And much of the first half of the film, especially, I mean, a lot of those locations, I could absolutely point them out on a map, like where they are. It was a little weird. I've never had that experience.
Yeah, that is surreal. Yeah, and you finally got to have that. That's kind of adorable. It really is. I think Diego's story is better though.
Oh, for sure, no doubt. I wasn't even trying to compete.
If we're playing the game that my bad boy is bigger than yours, then yes, Diego's bad boy is bigger than yours.
Bad boys lift each other up. That's
exactly.
Great answer. Exactly. Great answer, my friend.
Okay, let's go ahead and jump into the film itself. Bad Boys Ride or Die. This is the film that should have been Bad Boys for Life, as the internet has pointed out. But, you know, it is what it is. It is, once again, directed by Adil and Bilal, and it stars Will Smith, Martin Lawrence, Vanessa Hudgens, Alexander Ludwig, Paula Nunez, and a bunch of others that come and go throughout the film. If you're not familiar with Bad Boys Ride or Die, you are probably not listening to this review, I don't even know if we really need a setup. It's a Bad Boys movie. It's
that's all you need.
Mike Lowry and Marcus and
Will
their
Smith and Martin
shenanigans.
Lawrence at it again. Yeah, that's all you need.
So that's it. That's as far as the synopsis really needs to go. In fact, whenever Bad Boys 5 comes out, I hope that's what it is. It's Marcus and Mike and their shenanigans for a fifth time. I hope that's how
they just go on a road trip. There's no cops and robbers anywhere. They just go on a road trip.
Go on a road trip. Yeah,
it'll be like Bad Boys of Richard Linklater style.
I would love to see that.
Yeah,
I would love to see that. All right, so let's just go ahead and jump into this, and we'll start with you, Diego. What did you think about Bad Boys Ride or Die?
Again, I'm obviously coming in with a bias. I thought this movie rocked. I think this is nothing will ever dethrone Bad Boys 2 for me. I think that's just too specific a beast of a film, you know. But I think this is the best, like most entertaining sequel outside of that. I think it's most entertaining entry outside of 2 in general.
Okay.
Yeah, I think this movie's electric. I can go on and on, but I want to hear from you guys too.
Okay.
Well, let me just first say this. Yes, Bad Boys 2 is the best Bad Boys film. In fact, it might even be Michael Bay's best film because it's Michael Bay's most film. And for Michael Bay, that usually means it's his best as well, right? Like Michael Bay going full Michael Bay is something that you just don't see as often as I think the world needs. It's so ridiculous and so over the top. And I will say I give Adil and Bilal a lot of credit here because it feels like they're trying to channel a little bit of that Bayhem with Ride or Die a little bit. It's certainly by comparison to what they brought to Bad Boys for Life. I almost got that wrong. Bad Boys 3, I feel like I have to call it now because For Life, you're right, dude. For Life is so attuned to the title of Bad Boys 4. It's like,
well, to be fair, you didn't almost get that wrong. I think they got it wrong, and we're all suffering the consequences of that.
I don't think they realized how much of a hit Bad Boys for Life was going to be. And and when we talked about that film 4 years ago, we really praised it for being a big surprise. And I think that's why I still prefer that film over Ride or Die, not just because of how surprising it was, but like there was a surprising dose of melancholy to that one, a very reflective kind of vibe that was certainly the most self-reflective film of the 4, including Ride or Die right now. And I kind of appreciated that. I think that's what the franchise needed to really not reboot itself, but to revive itself, I guess. And I do think Ride or Die is still a very entertaining film, and really where it rides highest for me, it's in Adil and Bilal's direction. This thing gets really unhinged and almost hallucinatory at times. And it doesn't always land. Like some of the stuff they do is so ambitious that they kind of trip over their own ambitions, but I really respect a movie like this for trying to get a little bit weird. And it does try to get a little bit weird. And there are moments, though, from an action technical standpoint that I do think are genuinely creative. And we've seen some of the behind the scenes footage of Will Smith and Martin Lawrence, the use of a gun and the camera move, whatever that contraption is called. I'm sure some of you guys here can fill me in on that as well. But whatever that contraption is called is very creatively handled. And it makes me so sad that we might not get to see this Batgirl thing that they were working on. Because
I know.
It not even might not. Apparently, we won't even get to see it. Because if this is the kind of unhinged ambition that we were going to get for some type of movie like that, that's what movies like this need. They need a vision. Even if that vision doesn't always land, I like that they really try for something here. And while I do like For Life better as a movie, Ride or Die is one that does take some creative chances, aesthetic chances. And I think that makes it a very entertaining film because it's at least trying for some type of personality that we don't often see in commercial blockbusters nowadays. It doesn't feel like content, which I really like. And I think that's hopefully another reason why it's doing so well at the box office, because it has a sense of creativity to it. And if that's the reason for it, hopefully it creates another narrative as to what people are thriving for when they're going to the movies, not just the fact that people love these Bad Boys movies. But yeah, I really like the creativity here, and I think it's an entertaining movie.
Okay, so to start off my thoughts here, I just simply want to reiterate how much I love these movies. Yeah, I recently revisited Bad Boys 2 a few months ago, and I think I noted this on the show, Brennan. Forgive me if I did, and this is a little redundant for those that heard that episode, but when watching Bad Boys 2 again, all these years later, 20 years later, I experienced that movie as if I was watching it for the first time again. I laughed hysterically at that movie. I was wholly engaged with it. It was a total riot.
That is the meanest action movie ever made. And I love
It's
it.
so ugly as well. It's such a full, rich experience. I'm with you, Brendan. It is at the very least my favorite Bay, if it's not his very best. I
Yeah.
absolutely love it. And also, I think the charm of the Bad Boys films is Martin Lawrence and Will Smith. You just cannot teach the level of camaraderie and the chemistry they have on screen as those two characters. And it's funny because we've done top 3 lists before in the past where, I think of something specifically off the heels of Pacific Rim. And we did a top 3 of, okay, if you could pick 2 characters from any other movie in cinema history to be Jaeger pilots together, who would you pick? And immediately my number 1 was those 2 characters. I want Marcus and Mike to be in one of those Jaegers because the dynamic between the two of them would be just incredible. Like,
JD,
imagine them trying to do that.
I can only imagine your reaction. You might die.
I would have a heart attack.
If it was
Yeah.
announced that Guillermo del Toro was directing Pacific Rim 3 and it was going to feature these 2 as Jaeger pilots.
Yeah. And not just Martin Lawrence and Will Smith, like those specific characters, like Marcus.
Yeah,
and
not
Mike.
just the stars. Yeah, these characters. A crossover.
Yeah, my soul will leave my body 100%.
I'd have to get a
be
new
the
co-host.
last thing I did on this.
Diego, you
planet.
want a job?
No, really. I did make the Bayhem flag. I don't know if you guys saw that. That was for a podcast I did with Marcelo and Mike over on Talk Film Society back
Oh, nice.
probably the year Bad Boys 4 came out. Or Bad Boys 3 came out. Yeah, see, the Bad Boys for Life thing is messing it up again too.
It doesn't get.
But by the way, yeah, that Mike and Marcus in a Jaeger, that's the most incredible idea I've ever heard. And
It's clever. It's clever. It really is.
Yeah, I would want to see that immediately because those 2 characters are incredible. So I want to see them as many times as they'll give it to me. And of course, Bad Boys for Life delivered on that. So I was more than excited to see what they had for this latest entry. And I think what's interesting about this movie is that it is a little bit of a subversive turn comparatively to Bad Boys for Life. I think what I really loved about that movie is how deeply poignant it was. It certainly delivered on the thrill and the action and the chemistry of the 2 leads, no doubt about it. But that was a film that was also exhilarating in terms of its, its pathos and this reflective turn you had. I mean, that was a very different style than what Michael Bay had given us. I mean, I love Michael Bay, but it's not often he's going to slow down a movie and let's emphasize the character and their emotions and let's really wrestle with that. Like, that's just not Michael Bay's style most of the time. And I appreciated Bad Boys for Life for giving us something that is in line with Michael Bay and what we come to expect from those movies, but was also its own thing simultaneously, especially on an emotional level. And I loved it. So for me, that's my second favorite film in this franchise as it stands currently. And I wasn't exactly sure what to expect based off of the trailers for Ride or Die, given what they had seen for Bad Boys for Life, because it did seem to suggest something slightly different. Yeah. And it was. I kind of dug that this film was a little bit of a detour from even what they gave for Bad Boys for Life. And a lot of it very much comes down to what you're saying, Brennan, in terms of the aesthetic choices that they make here and how visceral and how pointed it is. I do really like that about the film. I don't know if it wholly works at times, but I really did appreciate the chances that
me too.
It took, and it certainly made for an engrossing experience. And of course, Martin Lawrence and Will Smith really come to play once again. I loved how it kind of creates this spiritualism that it uses as a gag for levity, I guess. throughout the film. Like I
It's
thought
so
all of that
weird.
was interesting.
It's so
It's
weird.
so weird. Again, like tonally, I don't know if it all works, but I love that the film goes for it.
In a
Like,
weird
it
way,
takes
like
swings.
I don't think it works, and that's kind of why I like it. It's
Yeah,
a weird way to
it is a
defend it.
little
Because
strange.
I like when movies take those chances.
I agree.
yeah.
I agree. No, I really same thing with like all of the cameos and characters that you don't expect to be in the movie. It's a little jarring, but in a way where I found myself giddy over it and really enjoying the moment. I found it immersive and fun, even if it was simultaneously distracting. Like I'm just gonna give it away. Spoiler alert, I guess. Like there's a moment where Michael Bay shows up in this movie, and I nearly fell out of my chair. And it was I don't know if your guys' theater crowd was any different than mine, but I don't think anyone else in my theater knew who that was, because I was the only one laughing and reacting loudly to the moment. I loved it, and I was very low.
Yeah.
If anyone else recognized that it was Michael Bay, they didn't say anything.
It certainly
So-
was not the loudest laugh that the movie got out of my theater.
Yeah.
I
And
think
it-
I was one of the
and-
few
and-
that got it.
To be fair, it isn't the biggest laugh out loud moment in the film, but as
Mm-hmm.
far as cameos and how effective they are here, I really enjoyed it, and it certainly got a laugh out of me. But
Sure.
yeah, I mean, we can talk more about it as we go. We can certainly bring Diego further into the conversation, but
Yeah.
I still, despite the swings, despite how some of them might not work for me, I still love the film overall.
Yeah, I mean, I think you guys are doing a good job of bringing me down to earth a little bit. No, because I think this is important, because like I love this movie, and I'm gonna say some probably absolutely wild stuff in defense of this movie. Well, not even defense, just like I think we're
Just-
all in
You
agreement.
responded to it.
That's
Yeah.
good. Yeah, I'm just responding to stuff. I do have more hangups with it than I did with For Life, but I also prefer this movie, if that makes sense. But it's
Sure.
I think this movie plays like the B-side to it, where it's like,
Sure. Yeah.
I think it's a traditional, like in a way, like what the legacy sequels have done for like the last 10, 15 years at this point, right?
Mhm.
It's like Force Awakens, for example, that seems to be like a touchstone of positive and negative responses to legacy sequels 10 years on,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
Where it's like, this is respectful to the legacy of the franchise, the heart, the characters and stuff. And I think Bad Boys for Life did a great job at that. What I think I missed a little bit with Bad Boys for Life is the Bayhem in the action. This movie is like, okay, we heard that complaint. Also, we have something to prove now, because studios are maybe getting a little cold feet when they hear our last movie's not getting released. No one knows exactly what that means unless they're behind closed doors. We don't know the entirety of what that means.
Yeah.
But I bet Adil and Bilal came to frickin' play when they were like, okay, this movie has to rock people's socks off, you know?
And I
Yeah.
bet that plays into what you said earlier, Diego, and that they shot this in like 2 months and turned it around like that. And I
That
bet
makes sense. Yeah.
I bet they knew exactly what they wanted, and they felt like they had something to prove as a result. I would bet.
And Diego, you made a great analogy there, calling Ride or Die kind of like the B side to Bad Boys for Life. Because when you made that analogy, and I started thinking of my own, I guess, like musical connections, if you will. I was thinking, okay, like these movies are certainly less artful than, say, a band like Radiohead, right? But I was thinking, if Bad Boys for Life was Kid A, then this is more rough around the edges, like Amnesiac was, and it is kind of rough. It's hard to get through at times. It doesn't really have much of a flow, or like it doesn't quite have that same sense of introspection like Bad Boys for Life did. And I like that, that we have them kind of working as like a yin and yang in some ways. And I think that makes them complement each other very well. And it makes sense that if this film were to have been shot in what 2 months or something like that. Is that what you said, JD?
I think like 2 or 3 months, because like January to March, they wrap. Then post is like 2 months, which is like, I'm glad it worked. Don't do that to people.
Well, no, but the reason why I can tell that seems to make sense in the context of Ride or Die as a final film is that it's not as meticulously scripted as Bad Boys for Life was. In fact, there's barely even a script to Ride or Die. It's the most basic cops and robbers.
It's a little
narrative.
bit more loose, for sure.
It is, which I kind of like. If I have any complaint here, sometimes maybe the looseness of that script maybe undersells how tight the camaraderie between Will Smith and Martin Lawrence could have been when you have all of this action kind of suffocating them. And this really almost feels like a showcase for Dylan Bilal in a lot of ways. And I did really appreciate that. And it makes me curious what Bad Boys 5 will be, if there ever is one. I'm sure we'll get one. But like, I do like that each of these films, all 4 of them, including the 2 Michael Bay films, they don't feel the same. All of them have their own distinct personality and their own distinct vision.
Yeah.
And I like that they all working together, they give you different flavors on how these movies operate, which I think is a really interesting thing.
Yeah. There's this weird, God, like I really just I have some minor like hangups in terms of like the character stuff, which is again very strange considering how much I do love this movie and how I had no hangups in For Life. But like, you know, I'll just spoilers because like the precipice of this movie is Mike's getting married.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, he's marrying the co-lead from the last one. Now he's this new character. And I'm like, okay.
I mean, hey, that seems totally random.
And then I love how that wedding reception is shot like it is a chase scene, right?
Yeah, like really, just the direction and the camera work in this movie is like, I think that's the stuff I responded the most to. Where I'm like, oh, they're not gonna settle into any like normal film blocking or dialogue coverage or anything. We're not doing that anymore. We saw Ambulance 2, and we're gonna use the crap out of those drones for everything. And that made me happy.
I respect the use of drones in Michael Bay's Ambulance, but they weren't always seamlessly integrated within the aesthetic context of that movie. They were kind of just randomly thrown in at times. Here, there's a smoothness to it. I think the way they're utilized here in Ride or Die is actually very smooth and effective, and I really respond to that as well.
Yeah, I love Ambulance. I agree. Bay, visual genius. I think Anthony Hopkins called him. Sir Anthony Hopkins called him, and I think I agree to an extent. I'm a big fan.
Yeah, same.
I would love him to be a little more specific in how he executes his stuff and how he connects the different styles of his camera work and technology. I love that he's experimenting. It's great.
Yeah,
they're day one for whatever else he does. I think these guys keyed in to a more fluid sense of motion with the action and
and
just the way they move the camera. But yeah, like the wife character. I'm sorry. I thought she was unfortunately that felt like a very 90s action movie thing. Like, oh yeah, this is going to be the emotional linchpin of this character. This is going to drive him. It's like
name is
it's like, okay, this is it's not really a character. It's sort of a nebulous like idea to drive the male protagonist.
She's a catalyst.
And it's like there's all these discussions about romance in movies and sex, and like we're having those discussions because there were failings in big movies like this regarding women in these roles, actresses in these roles. And it's like watching this movie, I was like, that's how we got here a little bit, just a little bit. Which is unfortunate.
And I think what's interesting about the trajectory of Mike here, and I do agree with you, I think part of why they chose what they did here is mostly for the laughs that it provokes more than anything else, because we're told that she is some sort of physical therapist, which is a callback. It's a joke to a Bad Boys 2 moment. So like if you're a lover of Bad Boys 2 like we are, you certainly get it right away. So it's like winking at the camera, the fact that she's this physical therapist, but we don't really know her as a character. And that vice for Mike in the film, I don't know if it really leads to anything either, because you get to that moment at the end. There's a couple of times where we see him experiencing these panic attacks, and that's very new for Mike. And anyone that's familiar with this franchise knows that it is so subversive to Mike and his ego. So for him to have those experiences, I think are interesting, but I don't know if it leads to anything, because you get to the end of the film where the action is culminating and Mike again starts to have an experience. He's having one of these transcendental out of body moments as Marcus somewhat had earlier in the film. And tonally, it's building up as if this is going to be some sort of catharsis for Mike. Nope, it's a gag. The whole thing is a lead up to a gag. And admittedly, it is funny, but they establish that character, the wife character, for a gag at the end of the film. And it leads to something that is a little deflating in terms of Mike and the trajectory of him over the course of all of these movies. Like, I don't know if I love that in terms of Mike as a character. Did I laugh in the moment? You bet your ass I did.
Well,
it was so funny.
It gets complicated because on one hand, I agree that from a scripting standpoint, yeah, that's messy. That's kind of anticlimactic, right?
Yes.
Emotionally, thematically, all the above. Yet, if the point was that they wanted to build something up, they being Adil and Bilal, only to suggest, yeah, we actually don't care about that. It's not important. It's just there for a gag. I kind of respect that. Like,
I did too, especially in terms of what you talked about earlier, the yin and yang of these two films.
Yeah.
Ride or Die and For Life. Like, I do appreciate and love that this film is honestly nothing like For Life. Like, it does kind of spin its wheels in a way that is so different. It pulls the rug out in a way that I do appreciate that it wasn't about mimicking. They didn't want to mimic what they did before. They wanted to do something new while still relishing in the familiar. And I think they mostly succeed in that. I do think it stumbles, perhaps because of the rushed shooting time frame. Maybe that's partially why some of the writing feels a little contrived here. I don't know. But there's something about that messiness that I do admire because it is refreshing and different.
Failed ambition over safe mediocrity.
Like, I'll take it. Yeah. Like I take, like, again, and also I think that's where execution really matters, because I don't love the writing of Mike as we articulated there, but I did laugh at the gag. I do think Martin Lawrence and his involvement in it, I'll say, he makes it work. It is really great. So it's a little bit of, okay, I don't love that, but it also got me. Like, okay, I got, sure. I guess I can live with it,
Yeah, I think Mike is where the writing's a little questionable sometimes. I think I'm better with where it leads as a joke, as a final point. I think it works enough for me. I think the stuff with Marcus in this is like all-timer bad boy stuff, where he's like,
wild.
I can't die. It's okay.
Yeah.
Just like off of that.
It's so good.
There are times, and I don't know if I mean this as a criticism or not, but there are times this almost feels more like a Martin Lawrence movie than it does a Bad Boys movie.
Yeah.
Like, it becomes so his thing, because you've got Mike, who's more grounded in normalcy and reality, that this balancing between Marcus and Mike is just so off in this movie when compared to the camaraderie of them in the previous three movies, which was they riffed on each other as if that they were both in the same moment, right? Like, they were both mentally and psychologically just like checked in. That you can almost only call like a psychic connection, right? And here there's a deliberate attempt to sort of separate them a little bit tonally. And I like that idea, but at times the balancing does seem a little bit off, especially during some of those more hallucinatory sequences that we talked about earlier, where I sat there and thought, this feels more like it could have been one of Martin Lawrence's lost movies, like Blue Streak or First Night. Remember that? Like some of those movies back in the early 2000s. It kind of veers more into that energy, which, again, unbalanced, but it kind of took me back to a time when commercial films were just a different thing. So I had this like weird whiff of nostalgia from it that I kind of went with at the same time. Again, unhinged ambition doesn't really work, but I'm kind of glad it goes for it.
And I think it works because this is a film that relishes in nostalgia. There's a lot of callbacks to the previous films, for better or worse, but I mostly very much enjoyed that. And Martin Lawrence is among the top reasons why I think it works. His performance here is incredible. And it's a great reminder because over the last decade or so, he really hasn't done much outside of these two Bad Boys films. And it's a great reminder that comedically, he's still a genius. He's still really good at what he does. And I love that he's fully committed to that whole ethos of I'm not gonna die. Fate has me. It's okay. I'm gonna walk out into the street with all this traffic. It doesn't matter. I'm good. Like I'm just gonna pull out all of the stops. I'm gonna become Mike and how he was in all of these other movies. That's who I'm gonna be now.
Yeah.
And I love how the cinematography even reflects that as well, which is really great. And it's very, very funny. It's certainly one of my favorite
I mean, there's
performances of the
that there's that element of like they're switching roles.
Yes,
You know, like the
they
first
are.
movie
Yeah.
physically has them pretend to be each other, and this one it's like, well, now Mike has the anxiety about stuff. Now
Yeah.
Marcus is embracing
Yeah.
like the bayham of it all. Like in
Mhm.
the trailer,
Mhm.
like there's that shot of Marcus on the car on like a pretty exciting foot chase through like several locations.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like Marcus is like in on it, you know. Usually he's like dragged along and like screaming, crying, which is
Yeah.
great. But here it's like Mike who's scared, and it's not like funny. It's like played very serious until like the end, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. A lot of
and-
the flipping of the coin, like what
Mhm.
Marcus is the one that has to save Mike from being run
Mhm.
over by the car. You know,
Yeah.
I just, I love the flipping of the coin there.
Yeah, and like on some level, like if they do Bad Boys 5, and they probably will, because this is like one of 3 movies that made money this year,
Yeah.
which makes me happy, but maybe not good
Yeah.
for the industry.
Yeah.
Like it does have an air of like, all right, what else do you do now though? Like
Mhm.
you
Yeah,
got to
it's
come
fair.
up with something else fresh now, because
Especially because they're getting
yeah.
older too. It's not like
Mhm.
they're young, you know. We
Yeah.
missed the opportunity to do these in like 2007 and 8.
yeah, I know we
Still
we
in their
missed out.
prime.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Which is
you
why
know.
maybe a hangout movie is where they need to go. Bad Boys on Vacation.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
send
that's
them-
the thing,
Bad
like-
Boys Bahamas.
yeah.
I mean, and that's the thing with those two performers and those two characters is I know they bill this as an action franchise because it has been, but those two characters are so great. The camaraderie is what makes them what they are.
Yeah.
And I think you could put them on a road trip with no action, no police involvement at all. Just the chemistry of those two. I would be there day one.
I'd be
I would love to
excited
see
for
that.
that. Yeah. I'd be absolutely excited for
But
that.
you do all joking aside, you do make a great point. I don't know what they do from here except regurgitate the formula. I don't know.
Yeah,
It's a
who
good
knows?
question. I can't even speculate on that in the moment. I know, JD, we talked about this some months ago. I forget what movie was spearheading the conversation, but no, it was our conversation with Brandon Streisnig on Michael Bay. And we thought, how cool would that be if Michael Bay came back to do Bad Boys 5? Like just kind of like a reunion of sorts. But at the same time, I really like what Adil and Bilal are doing
Yeah,
with these two films.
I agree.
Especially
I
this one.
don't think they have to leave. I mean, I love Bayhem. I really like Ambulance. I know you love it as well, Diego.
Mhm.
That film didn't do great financially though. So I don't know where he sits among the Hollywood studios. Something like Bad Boys 5 probably would be alluring. That could be his way back in to do something like that, or Transformers again. Who knows? But an IP, it's going to take an IP probably
It
for
will.
him to come
Yeah, it'll be one
back.
of the two probably.
I think it will, and I'll just say, like, just to pat myself on the back a little bit for the premiere story again, like, they did give him his flowers because he was in attendance in the theater and he got a standing
Oh, wow.
ovation,
Good,
which
good.
I
That's great.
participated in, obviously.
Of course.
That
But
translates to I started the standing ovation.
Oh, I wish. I will say I'm the only one who cheered when Fletcher showed up, and I felt a little
my
bad
gosh.
because I was like, "Oh, he's right here. You guys don't even know." But it's fine.
Oh, okay. Well, you did the Lord's work. Good job there.
Thank you.
Yeah, the whole Fletcher scene for me was a roller coaster of emotions. I don't know if you guys had the same experience or not.
Yes.
Because
Yeah, pretty much.
I was giddy the moment he comes on screen. I love the character, the fact that he shows up again. Oh my gosh, incredible. And then that whole sequence crystallizes, and I feel like I blacked out for the next 2 minutes. they did what to my guy?
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you, like, and of course there's a whole action sequence that takes place there, but I felt like I missed the whole thing because the whole time I was recoiling at what they did to Fletcher. Oh, it was
Again, bad storytelling to lead to lead that off into another action sequence, or just bold daringness. Like it's kind of another. It goes back to that same argument I think that we keep circling around. But I weirdly respect that trajectory at the same time.
Yeah, I respect it too. And I'll be honest, I started to get a little concerned when they were like, when they're hyping up like, oh, this movie leads back to through the entire franchise. And I'm like, yeah, you're just saying stuff because promotional materials. And then you see the movie, and they're kind of not all the way, but they're kind of doing like a Spectre thing, where it's like, actually, these people are connected through this movie and that movie. This ties back to the second movie this way. And I was like, oh, careful. Be careful. Like, I love these movies. I don't think there's really great storytelling until Bad Boys for Life. I think that's the best written of the movies.
That's the best scripted of the four. Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, by far. And that's with love to the other three. I ranked the first one at the bottom of my franchise rankings, and I'm still getting angry messages on Twitter about that.
I do too. I do too. And I think that's only happened because we have these other three to compare it to. I think in a way, it's almost as if history hasn't been as kind to that first one, when now we kind of see it as almost a demo reel for what these other ones were eventually going to do.
I still really like it for whatever.
Oh yeah, me too.
It has some good things in it. I guess the thing that bothers me the most about that first one is that so much of Marcus and Mike, they spend so much time off screen as opposed to being on screen together, and their dynamic on screen is really what makes it. But the comparison from Bad Boys 1 to Bad Boys 2 is such an extreme difference that I'm glad both of them exist in the way that they do. I love how they shift between the two as completely different beasts.
Yeah. And it's like, I give that movie its flowers as well, because it's like we don't get Bay or this franchise without it,
Yeah.
And that's like a very obvious statement, but like, no, I do still like love it, and I think it's okay to not love it the most, but I guess other people disagree. But
every movie in a franchise is number one nowadays. That's the rule. Everything's ranked first.
Just wait till I get to those Star Wars rankings one day.
Oh, because the world needs more controversy.
I know.
Yeah. So I have an idea. I want to circle back to something we mentioned a moment ago as far as where does this franchise go next. Actually, I think the answer is sitting right in front of our faces. I think we all know the real answer to this.
Oh, Diego directs it?
Nope. Well, that would be great. I would be against that either.
I would take on that challenge, and then I'd get run out of Hollywood. But I would take that challenge. Absolutely. Jerry,
well, I can tell you already have two defenders here if you take some chances at.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
We'll defend the hell out of it.
Thank you.
The next movie will star, Marcus and Mike will certainly be a part of it, but the next one will star the real MVP of this movie,
Reggie
McDonald. You focus on him next. Let him be the one that takes the reins in the next movie, because he steals the show here.
You know what would be really funny? If they bring Reggie in as a main character, like you're saying there, JD, but they still hold on to Marcus and Mike, and they play into the mishmash of titles here that Bad Boys for Life is really Bad Boys 3 when it should have been Bad Boys 4. So make the three of them be the leads and call it Bad Boys 3.
Oh,
there you go.
Actually, I love that. I actually had an idea, because like I don't want to give the game away too much, because when I saw that, I was like, if this movie plays for people, that's going to be everyone's like favorite scene. It's so it's good, but it's so hilarious, but so like awesome, and like it's sincere. It's ridiculous, but it's sincere, which is like such a specific tone to strike, and it's really difficult to do. Like you only get that through very specific setup and payoff, and obviously there's a lot to talk about there. I don't even know if I want to say the whole scene, but I had an idea, like, all right, so Will Smith's like son in this movie gets in on the action again, and
he's a big part.
A big part. Awesome actor, really good at selling action. All that stuff's awesome. Again, without giving the game away, Reggie comes to play, and I thought the next movie you gotta get those two guys
linking
together.
Those guys up. I like that idea. Honestly, I think that would be great.
Yeah, don't push Mike and Marcus aside. It's still their movie. But they get captured by the bad guys leading the third act, whatever, right?
Yeah.
Reggie has to go looking. whatever for a little help, and who does he come across?
That's it. We have
Yeah.
we have our new Avengers.
Yes,
This is my new Avengers.
Yeah.
That's the team up I want to see.
All right, well, so then let's take away my Bad Boys 3 title and just call it Bad Boys Endgame.
There we go. Yeah. Mhm.
I think that would be great. That's $1 billion movie right there. I love that. I think this film, intentionally or otherwise, set that up with those two characters to equally be involved in whatever the next one is. I think it would be great, especially given the response to the Reggie scene, because it has been everyone's favorite. I noted earlier that I was the only one that laughed at the whole Michael Bay reference, but everybody on the planet that has seen this film has loved that scene. Everyone's responded to it.
I mean, do we just just like do we just say it? Like, if we're are we going to talk spoilers about that, or do we just hold it close to the vest and let the audience?
We can go into it. Let's talk it through. Let's talk it through. We're 50 minutes into this.
Okay.
I think it's fair.
I think by this point,
if
people have stuck around in this conversation, they've seen the movie by this point.
Yeah,
probably.
So we can get into spoilers. So
Reggie kills like 15 people.
Yes,
and it's so cool
because he's a U.S. Marine, sir.
He's a U.S. Marine.
Yeah,
and it's incredible.
And he needed to deploy, and he deployed.
Yes. So like it's a great moment on its own that equally shows reverence to Michael Bay's filmmaking style while playing up the drama, the sincerity that you're talking about, and the levity that comes with these films, especially with Martin Lawrence. Like how it's working on all those levels is incredible. Because on one hand, you have Reggie, this character that we've known since Bad Boys 2, has grown to be this U.S. Marine and has this badass moment where he's going around killing these people, which leaves Marcus in this state of panic. But because it's Martin Lawrence, it's equally kind of funny, all while the camera is going back and forth in the same style that you see in Bad Boys 2, the whole Michael Bay, with the way the camera swings back and forth, going between different rooms. Like it's doing all of that at the same time. It's truly an incredible moment that I loved.
Yeah, and honestly, just to talk about it even more seriously, if we can, like, I would love to get the viewpoint of real life U.S. Marines on this scene to see if it actually does a real, because I really felt like it was obviously a lot of fun, like we're talking about, but it did feel not just sincere in the moment narratively, but it didn't feel like a spit in the face of servicemen or anything like that. Like it didn't feel like it was using it for the wrong reasons. And I would love to get the viewpoints of those who really did serve to see if they feel the same way, because I did feel a sense of respect during that scene as well, which I do. Again, I appreciate that. That's a moment where the balancing is so well done that we say this a lot, JD, movies that have these moments that they're able to have their cake and eat it too. And I kind of feel like this is a moment that's doing that as well.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Reggie's the butt of like basically one of the most infamous joke scenes of all time. I think Roger Ebert even called it like evil or repugnant or something in his 1-star review of Bad Boys 2.
He's not wrong.
Yeah, that's the thing. He's
why
not
it deserves
wrong.
4 stars and not 1 star.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like every criticism about the ethics of that movie. It's like, yeah, you can't really disagree, but
exactly.
Did you see when the car flipped over, Martin Lawrence screaming out the window? That was crazy.
Yeah.
The best car chase in movie history until Mad Max Fury Road, because you're never topping that movie.
That's fair.
But yeah, like the Reggie thing, it's like we do like him. Like he's never been like as the butt of the joke. He's never in a position of wrongness. It's Mike and Marcus that are out of pocket. So like to see him just finally get in on the action, because I never thought I want to see Reggie in action, like it's not a thought I had. I wasn't against it. It's just like, oh, that character's there for comedic beats, right? He's part of the family now. I think the family elements were previously pretty underrated pre Bad Boys for Life, right? Sure. And then now it's just like, oh, like they're like everyone can get in on this. Like it's a real true crowd pleasing moment in that sense.
Yeah.
That's a great point. And I think that's a great point as to why the Reggie scene works so well, because there really wasn't much to set it up. And so many times we get these fist in the air moments with many movies, and they're kind of they're telegraphed at times, right? And sometimes they're rightfully telegraphed because it's good storytelling to build to that moment. So there's actually what we say, it emotionally earns that moment. But for some reason, by not telegraphing it literally in this case is why it works so well. And well, I mean, because it was sort of telegraphed, but not in the way you would expect, turning Reggie into the butt of a joke, like you were talking about, Diego, only to then subvert that this is a man that might even be more capable at this job than anyone else in this universe. And so, it's well done. It's well done.
I mean, it took 3 films of buildup, and you're right. There's not much. It's not as if he's been in these films a ton.
Right.
But as Diego pointed out, that scene in Bad Boys 2, for better or worse, is unforgettable. They are completely out of line. Mike and Marcus are completely out of line.
Absolutely.
But what it does, though, is it does create empathy for that character. You do understand why he would be scared out of his gourd in that moment. And then the few moments you get in Bad Boys for Life, it's a little bit of that same thing. You're like, oh, I'm glad to see him again.
Yeah.
And you feel yourself kind of drawn to that character. That when he's introduced in this film again, you're like, oh, I'm happy to see him. He notes that he's a U.S. Marine, not thinking anything of it in the moment, other than it's used again as a joke for Marcus early on there in the movie. So then when he comes back, not only is it this like fist in the air moment that Reggie gets drawn into the action, but it becomes this moment of catharsis for Marcus.
Yeah.
Because he has to rely on Reggie. So it's kind of this incredible subversion where, they take that moment in Bad Boys to build to this moment where Reggie has to be the hero and save the day, and Marcus can't do anything about it.
That's the moment Marcus finally saw him as his son-in-law, right?
Yeah. And what is he says? Chitty chitty bang bang. You can have all my snacks. Whatever he says there. It's incredible.
Which translates to "I love you, family."
Yeah. Shout out to actor Dennis McDonald. I had to look up his name because it's like I got to pay respects to the man who's only been in 3 movies and they're all Bad Boys. That is a legendary run.
All he's done, but everyone loves him now.
Yep.
And he has the most awkward smile to crystallise a movie that I think I've ever seen, and it is amazing.
Yeah,
it was beautiful. It was perfect for this movie. It was perfect.
Yeah. Made me want some chicken. I'll tell you that.
Oh yeah.
And I do love how that whole sequence at the end kind of plays out the same, where it's Marcus and Mike talking the whole time. He's just looking there stoically, but tonally, it's such a very different experience.
Yeah,
I just
absolutely.
Yeah,
I thought he was going to end up getting in on the third act action. He didn't, and that's okay because
you can't have too much of a good thing
happening. Yeah. Maybe they're saving that bullet, but that's what I was going to
say. Maybe they're saving that bullet. Especially now that everyone loves him in this movie. The opportunity is there.
If that was a marketing test, then kudos for them for doing that.
Yeah. I mean, one thing I think we know of Jerry Bruckheimer is that he's a producer of the people. Maybe not fiscally, but I think he maybe not as much the last 15 years, but now again he's kind of he's got his finger on the pulse of like people do want not simple, but classical blockbusters. Top Gun 2. It's a very simple movie, played like gangbusters to a lot of people, myself included. I really like that movie. Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, beginning, middle, and end. Make sure those all work. Put movie stars in that movie to carry the audience through. Do some setup, pay it off in the third act. Boom, $1 billion,
Yeah, and it's not even just that. It's a tone, it's an aesthetic, it's a physicality, a tangibility that these films used to have that I think maybe some people are clamoring for, which is why, and JD, we've talked about this many times when we have box office conversations. We keep trying to guess what the next hit of the summer might be, and that's why I keep going to a movie like Twisters as possibly being that movie, and not just because it calls back to a literal movie from that age, but it's most likely going to be that movie that does what you're talking about there, Diego, and sort of have that what I call a classic blockbuster feel. I mostly speak from the millennial standpoint, a classic blockbuster being a 90s blockbuster, right?
Yeah.
But I think there are audiences that are clamoring for that kind of thing again. And this movie kind of does that. Bad Boys Ride or Die does that more specifically. And I really love that it does that. I love that tangibility.
Yeah, it is really interesting that we live in a world where Hollywood seems to be scrambling for what to do next. And I don't know if Barbenheimer helps in that or makes it all the more confusing that a Barbie movie and Oppenheimer, of all things, are the two movies that ended up grossing $1 billion last year.
I'm really starting to think it was more of the exception and not the rule.
It might be that for sure,
Yeah.
especially when you look at something like Bad Boys Ride or Die, and to Diego's point, how it invokes so much of what we saw with Top Gun Maverick. And there is something about how those two movies, and I would certainly include Bad Boys for Life in this as well, that are these legacy sequels that are structurally sound. They have the movie stars, as you're talking about, but they also do a great job of using nostalgia in the right ways. Like Top Gun Maverick and these Bad Boys films, I think, do that impeccably, where it's not wholly reliant on nostalgia, but they're utilized in a way that creates earned emotion, that creates levity, and it allows the actors to play in a sandbox that will feel familiar to the audience, but they can create something new and fresh and stimulating all at the same time.
For sure.
And people are responding to that.
Yeah.
It's hard to deny it when you see not just the box office results, but the discourse on social media, the audience scores. Like, people are very much responding to it. So, and maybe that's where other IPs are kind of missing that formula a little bit.
Because these movies don't feel like content. They feel like movies. And I don't necessarily think a general audience member is going to go into a movie thinking, I hope this movie visually looks good, right? Like, they're not thinking that thing. But if a movie does have that tangibility like we're talking about, I still think general audiences are able to pick up on that without picking up on that thing specifically. They're able to sense that these movies that we're talking about here, Top Gun Maverick being the prime example, I think, they just feel different. They don't feel like they were shot on a green screen. They don't feel like content. Like they feel like they were made as a movie. And I think that's what people are latching on to. And the more we talk about Bad Boys Ride or Die here, and I keep latching on to the ambition of a Dylan Bilal and how movie-like this feels, I'm starting to like this movie more as we talk about it. And I really enjoyed it coming into this conversation. Before we got to this point in the conversation, I probably had it ranked third of the 4 Bad Boys films, but now I'm starting to think I might put it in second place now, just because I love the ambition. I love that tangibility, because it's going for something that I want to see in movies more often. And the ethos of this conversation is representative of that.
Yeah. I mean, I came out of the experience thinking that maybe it was my least favorite of them, and that still could be true. All those problems you mentioned earlier still exist for me.
Fair.
Those have not disappeared at all, but I do appreciate the ambition of it. I have no problem. I haven't seen the original Bad Boys in a few years now. I'd have to really give it another go to be fair to that film, but I would have no problem at the very least ranking this third, because it's where it succeeds. I think it really nails those moments for sure, and those beats. I don't think I will ever be able to put this above For Life. That is such a structurally sound movie. The writing is too good. I love the reflective poignancy of it.
That's a tight movie. That is the tightest movie of the 4. It really is.
And I do love how different it is to the others. It is so introspective in a way that you don't expect for these characters. And I love that. And then of course Bad Boys 2 is a masterpiece. So like I don't know if those two films will ever change in terms of a ranking, but I think the more I ponder on this film and the more we talk about it, I do think it certainly rises more to that level than maybe where I sat originally, if that makes sense.
It does. Yeah.
Yeah. Even if those problems exist for me still, I do love the ambition of this film. It's great. I can't wait to see it again. I've only seen it the one time.
Bad Boys saving cinema.
Yeah. I got to make it out to the theater again for it because it plays on the big screen so well, and specifically that third act, which is like, I mean, just to mention tangibility, like the explosions, the shootings, that like they're like on these wooden docks in this abandoned theme park, and so it looks like a John Woo movie at points, where like the splintering wood when they're shooting everywhere.
Oh yeah, and the
There's
slow
water
motion.
flying
It's
up.
wow. That is okay. This movie rocks. This movie's amazing.
Yeah.
I did not pick up on the John Woo comparison, but now that's all I see.
I think these movies owe a big debt to John Woo. God bless him. I hope he gets to make another movie in Hollywood. Because he's good at it, even if the scripts aren't. But that's another conversation. But yeah, this movie is just that third act, I think, is 5 stars, and I think the first 2 acts are really strong 4 stars for me. Yeah, but that third act, man.
The third act has a literal monster. The third act has a literal monster attacking.
Yeah.
It's
and
of course it's 5 stars.
And I love that the monster is as over the top as the rest of the movie is.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I mean, they say it's an alligator, but it's really a dinosaur.
It's a dinosaur.
It borderline turns into Jurassic Park in that third act.
Yeah, I have yet to see a film that treats alligators, especially Florida alligators, the way they actually act in the wild. That doesn't exist in Hollywood, which is fine, I guess. But because we saw it earlier in the year as well with Roadhouse. Same idea. It might have been the same gator. Who knows? Same dinosaur, rather.
Same dinosaur. Yeah.
He's got a good agent.
Exactly.
Gosh, that's such a stereotype with that agent. They just think they attack people, right?
Yeah.
What if they're gentle creatures?
Yeah, but the gator's got to pay rent.
That's true. That's true. Yeah,
gotta get your money.
Systemic issue.
Stepping stone. Maybe he'll be in an Oscar nominated film next time.
Yeah.
The gator will be the 5th bad boy in the next one. So then we'll have 5 for the 5th movie.
That's so ridiculous, and I'll totally see it.
Yeah, I'm there.
Any final thoughts you guys have on Bad Boys Ride or Die? Any final thoughts?
I will say this: as underwritten as the character of McGrath is, Eric Dane is pretty compelling as a villainous presence. I at least give him that. I think he's having fun, and sometimes just having a villain on screen that's there to simply have fun and chew up the scenery. Sometimes that's all you want. This is not a movie that's calling for a complex villain, a multi-dimensional villain that we often like to see, but at times I kind of get sick of seeing that if it doesn't need that. I just sometimes like a baddie that's able to effortlessly have fun, and he does. So so there's at least a compelling presence there when Mike and Marcus aren't even on screen.
Yeah,
no, that's a good point. I agree with that. I don't need like his methods are right, but he's going too far in Bad Boys 4. You know what I mean?
He's not Thanosing this or anything.
Yeah, I need a bad guy who likes drugs and money and shoots people. That's it. Yeah, and I need them to get shot and blown up in the third act, and that's the movie.
Yeah, with you.
And you know what? To that point too, it's even more essential that there's simple bad guys in these, because there's so many characters and actors in this movie that we didn't even mention in passing, like Rhea Seehorn, right? That's how
Rhea Seehorn, from Better Call Saul. Yeah,
terrific actress. Not even bad in this movie. It's just like, okay, again, like she has a beginning, middle, and end to her story, but it's very like minuscule.
Oh, you total up her screen time, it might equal like 2 minutes.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I hope she gets more high profile work where she gets to lead something, but I do think she's good in a very small part. And Joey Pants Force Ghost. If you need something else to play on the movie, there's a Joey Pants Force Ghost in this. The first 5 minutes. So
yes, there is.
Yeah. Coupled with a parakeet. So this movie gets weird, and I respect that it gets weird.
I love that. I love that we have this spiritual realm that Marcus goes to.
There's an underside to these movies. There really is.
Yeah. I do love that, and I love how there's a literal element to that as well at the end
Yeah.
of the film.
Yeah.
It's so ridiculous. It's
So
awesome.
so absurd. Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you guys though, as far as like the plotting. I love that they don't overthink it. If anything, it's kind of like it's a ripoff of Bad Boys 2 in some ways, but we don't really care as much about it.
Yeah.
You know, like they even invoke Bad Boys 2 in the plotting of that film at one point. So
Oh
like,
yeah.
like the film isn't interested in any of that. It just needs us to get us from one moment to the next, and it has a lot of fun with that. Some good ambition here. I can't wait for the next one. I assume that there's going to be another one, and I hope Adil and Bilal are back, and I can't wait. I'll see you guys. We'll regroup in another 2 years.
Oh, hey, I'm there. You know I am, and I hope they come back too. I know they're doing something else right now, but yeah.
All right. Well, with all of that said, if you agree or disagree with anything we had to say, you can leave a comment below if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please reach out to us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or you can email us in sessionfilm@gmail.com. We would absolutely love to hear from you. Diego, thanks for being here, man. This was a pleasure.
Oh, yeah.
We loved it.
Oh, thank you guys for bringing me back. I love talking to you guys. I love watching and talking Bad Boys, obviously.
Man.
Yeah, if that fifth one happens, I'm there. No question.
You'll be back.
You'll be
We'll
back.
certainly have you back. Tell us about all of the fun stuff you do on the internet. Where can we find your work? Where can we find you on social media?
Oh yeah, you could follow. I do photography a lot now. You can follow that on Diego Crespo grams on Instagram. The Waffle Press Movie Podcasts, where I co-host with my buddy Gina Versa, Mac Ringo. We do bi-monthly or bi-weekly hangouts for normal podcasting, interview type stuff, retrospective series, failed award contenders, failed blockbusters, failed at the critically or at the box office, but not failures in our hearts. Sometimes they are also, but we don't need to focus on that. But yeah, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Waffle Press on Twitter, YouTube, SoundCloud, Spotify, iTunes, wherever you get those podcasts.
Absolutely.
Yep. Please go check it out. Really, really great stuff. Thanks again, Diego. This was really great. As we wind down here, just a reminder to go and check out the main show. It just dropped. Episode 589. We continue our Best Picture movie series, talking about the best years of our lives, which was a long conversation, but a really fun, great conversation that puts a cap on our 1940s discussion as it relates to World War II and Hollywood. It was really fun. So please go and check
Great
that out.
Great movie.
Yeah. And we'll also have another review coming later on this week where we are discussing Evil Does Not Exist. So you can be on the lookout for that as well. And there'll be new episodes of Women in Session and Chasing the Gold as well. So a busy week once again. Please go and check all of that out. Before we get out of here, guys, any final thoughts on anything before we leave today?
Oh, we didn't even comment on the Reba song.
Oh gosh, the Reba Bad Boys 2 remix.
It's from a mixtape.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for having me again. This is always a
Yeah.
real treat.
Yeah, absolutely. Love that story you told at the beginning. No one's going to live up to that. That is a heck of a Bad Boy story.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm very, very happy for you. In addition to the next Bad Boys film, I look forward to the Pacific Rim remake as well with these two.
What if Bad Boys 5 is just a crossover?
It's a crossover event.
Guillermo del Toro's Bad Boys 5 Pacific Rim 3 would save planet Earth.
Yeah,
I think it would.
so. That's how you save Hollywood and the Earth.
gosh.
No doubt about it. I look
I
forward to
want
that.
all these ideas that we brought up.
I know. Why aren't we running Hollywood?
I know we should. We have all the best ideas.
Jerry Bruckheimer, Jerry B,
apparently
where you at?
We're the ones with
Get
the
a hold of
ideas,
us,
right?
yeah. With all of that said, thanks for listening, everybody. Thanks for watching. We will see you next time on the In Session Film Podcast.